Podcasters Roundtable. Let me hit record. Oh, it's good. Good timing. Podcasters Roundtable. Round 76. The state of live streaming. I almost forgot what I named this one. It's actually a new state. It's a square state. It's not that exciting. I'm kidding. If you live in a square state, you probably do exciting stuff there. But being in California, we could chop off Southern California and we would still be square. All right, it's not about actual states in the U.S. It is what's going on with live streaming. We've seen some changes recently, and specifically to video platforms, and one we are using here, which is Google Plus Hangouts On-Air. But let's meet the lineup first. And sitting right next to me, virtually of course, Mr. Rob Greenlee, Roundtable himself. Welcome back.
Well, it's great to be here, Ray, as always. It's always fun to get on here and talk with the group. It's always enjoyable, and we have just a geek out time with podcasting.
That's right. It's a virtual campfire. I've got a beverage. Grab your favorite, and we will just chat. Next to Rob is new Roundtabler, Krishna. Welcome to the Roundtable.
Oh, delighted to be here. It's so nice to be in live conversation with you guys after having followed you virtually and every other way over the many, many years.
Oh, thanks so much. And what is the name of your podcast?
I have a current podcast called Talking Social Business, and I have a live stream show called The Live Stream Insiders.
A live stream show. So that's very interesting. Krishna is a perfect person to be on this round, so we're going to dive into that. Co-host Dave Jackson, welcome back, buddy.
Yeah, Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com, and this should be interesting because every time you think you got it nailed, they move the target.
Yeah, it's like going to the grocery store and they change the aisles on you every year. You got to readjust.
Where's the milk?
Guys, keeps you honest.
Yeah. The milk is the one thing that doesn't move, fortunately, and we always need milk. Daniel J. Lewis, co-host, Podcasters Roundtable. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm from theaudacitypodcast.com, and I live stream the show regularly. Actually, I live stream all of the shows that I record. So I love live streaming.
I do too. I live stream everything as well.
Lots of live streamers. Live streamers before podcasting, right, Rob? I think you were live streaming before podcasting. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I did a live radio show for many years.
Oh, so there's a live stream for you.
That qualifies, I think.
Analog.
Yes, analog.
Back in the day, Steve.
But then I took it home and didn't do live streaming for many years, so now I'm back doing it again. So
very cool. Yeah. So about as soon as Google Plus opened up Hangouts on Air, I started Podcasters Roundtable. In fact, Podcasters Roundtable was pretty much created specifically for the platform, but that doesn't mean it was created only on Hangouts on Air. That's important. We will chat about that. But in the beginning, I used to give updates all the time, like to what was new on Hangouts on Air. And that's because every time we went live, there were new features to talk about. Like the most anticipated for me was like, are we going to get HD? Yeah, it didn't even do HD in the beginning. And the audio quality was, I guess you could call it SD. It was very subpar. It's still not the best, but we got better. So now the latest update is that Hangouts on Air is going away. Well, if you read the Verge article, that's what it made it sound like. But they're not killing it. They're moving it out of Google Plus. They're pretty much, I think that they are sort of winding down Google Plus slowly. They're pulling different products out, but they're moving Hangouts on Air to YouTube, which is fine with me. I'm happy with the tech. I mean, video live streaming for multiple remote people, that's not going away. I think where it will have an impact on this show, on Podcasters Roundtable, is if they kill the other important feature, which is the event page, which I think they might, because now I schedule an event, and the key thing is I can't invite a ton of people. So I've always given a lot of credit, especially early on in the Roundtable history, to the features that Google Plus Hangouts on Air provided us, specifically that event page, for driving higher than previously experienced viewer numbers. And what I mean by that is I've live streamed before Google Plus Hangouts on Air, but when Hangouts on Air came out and you could make an event page and invite all the people in your circles, it really drove up the viewing experience because you could send out the invite, and then the key element is that it reminded someone, hey, you've RSVP'd for this and the live stream's starting, or it's going to start, or however it's going to notify you. And that drove a lot more live viewers to each show. It seemed to be for that way. It's anecdotal, but that's how it seemed to work for me. And this is the feature I'll miss most if it's going away. So we'll see about that. I was able to create this one on YouTube Live the way they want you to do it now. But again, I created an event, but I couldn't invite my circles. I don't even know if circles will exist anymore. I don't know. We'll talk a little about that. But the power of that event page, I think, has waned over the years because the newness has worn off and people, they opt out of notifications, right? But it's still a great complement to an email list, which you definitely now want to be on, podcastersroundtable.com/guest. Go over there. You can get on the email list. You can also sign up to be on around. So I expect to see a drop in the live numbers if we're not able to utilize that anymore, but it's not a huge deal because we know that live streams, they're for the most highly engaged of your community, but that's a very, I think, the core of your sector. I mean, those might be your patrons, or those are people who are really going to drive your show. They're going to pass on the word. But I know many people will miss streams that they would have attended before if they didn't get the notification. And that reminder is a key element. So I really have enjoyed that. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but we will see.
It's funny that there's kind of an opposite direction with two very popular live streaming technologies. Blab.im shutting down as far as we know, and they're going to rebuild themselves. From all indications, it seems like Blab did not want to become a broadcasting tool. They want to be a social network.
Right. And even so, if you read his post, the CEO of Blab, it was actually pretty good. And I kind of respect him for, he didn't reach certain goals he wanted to. And that's what he's going after, sort of cutting down a business that he could survive on. I mean, it could do fine. It sucks for us because it was a cool platform. We've used it on Podcasters Roundtable before. But again, if you want to talk about like, should you live stream? What are the pros? What are the cons? Check out Podcasters Roundtable around 26. That's where we deal with a lot of that. But now we're just going to talk about, so what now, right? I mean, we're making the move to YouTube, not a big deal. But Blab is gone, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so Blab, the company wants to make a social network. Whereas you look at what Google Plus has done, and Google Plus initially made a social network, but then they found themselves making all of these great broadcasting tools. And it seems like now Google is wanting to take that social network and transition it into a broadcasting tool and maybe shut down the social network aspect.
Yeah, they've really, I think they, at least a year ago, said no more. It's the social network aspect has failed. Like going up against Facebook, good luck with that. You know, even for someone like Google, which is pretty scary. But Krishna, do you use the Hangouts On-Air and the event page and Google Plus the way that I'm using it here with the Roundtable, or do you do something different?
Well, originally I was using Hangouts On-Air, and I remember watching your show and kind of thinking, how is he doing all of that? How has he figured it all out? And so I actually had a show, and I say a show because I had guests, and I wasn't repurposing that as a podcast. So that's why I'd call it separately as a show. So I was using Google Hangouts On-Air, and I joined Blab over 365 days ago. And I think it's because a lot of people on Google were finding out about Blab, so a whole bunch of us jumped over there. And that's one of the reasons I used it, was that it was so easy for people to be able to join. And that's, I think that's one of the reasons. And it was also pretty addictive in the early days. So that's where I would have used, but I use lots of tools. So I do a lot of mobile live streaming as well. So I was on Periscope on the day it launched. I was on Facebook Live as soon as it was available to me here in Europe. Every live platform that comes out, if I can do, and if it's particularly on my mobile, I'm really interested in that, and being able to test those. So I've used lots of different tools, and as I said, for our show, we stuck with Blab. And one of the things that we found is that, unfortunately, you were talking about numbers of people watching your shows. Our show viewer time in terms of in real time and also replays dropped dramatically when you had to have an account on Blab. Initially, you didn't. You could watch it if you had a URL or a link of that event. You could go and watch it. Obviously, it was great. It was serendipitous. You could pop in and see other content. But it's interesting in terms of where do we go now. So I'm intrigued about what you guys are all planning to do.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big deal. I mean, Blab did the other thing that Google Hangouts On-Air did, is they made it push button simple. Right? I mean, that is the key. Not only we're doing multiple remote people, right? A lot of platforms, and we are talking pretty much video here in this case, and we will even talk about audio only for live streaming, but for video, remote, multiple people, like, I mean, you guys just jump on, I send you an invite, you jump on, and we're going, right? Blab was like that too. And where the event page for me drove a lot of views to this show, Blab's social feature, man, it was just out there, and it just seemed like people just poured in on Blab. I mean, Dave, you used Blab a lot. What do you think was the main reason that it was successful in getting live viewers, which is a tough thing to do?
When you first signed up, I think it was a default. It just seemed like it was super easy to follow people, and then all of a sudden, I remember when I first signed up, like every 10 minutes I was getting a notification. Miss Eileen is on Blab, Jason Bryan is on Blab. All my friends, every time they did anything. And in some cases, I think it let me know, even if they weren't producing a show, like if they were just there. So it was like, oh, I wonder what Jason's watching. So I would go over and go, nothing. Okay, great. And so, but nonetheless, it really made it sound like, hey, everything is going on over here, and if you're not there, you're missing something. So I think that
was a key thing, wasn't it? Because if you're on desktop, and I have to say, I used mobile only for Blab for many months. And then I moved over to desktop. But on desktop, you could see that somebody was there. And it's like, okay, well, if they're hanging out somewhere, they might be somewhere interesting. Let me go follow them. And so that's what I meant by it in terms of being quite addictive. I spent untold hours. I won't even begin to add them up last year in terms of just meeting interesting people and meeting people for the first time that perhaps I'd watched on Periscope or Meerkat, or I'd heard their podcast, but I'd never had the opportunity to speak face-to-face and voice-to-voice.
Yeah. It always seemed like it was one of two extremes. It was either somebody who was there with content and ready to give it to you, or you spent 40 minutes going, what am I watching again?
Well, and this is the sort of problem, at least for Blab, and one of the things you get with live stream platforms, right, where there's a lot of garbage and there's occasionally content.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's a live streaming social platform. Like, that's what Blab was in the beginning. I think that what we could see happening is that with Hangouts on Air being moved to YouTube, and YouTube recognizing how much live video is taking over in the space on social networks, I'm sure YouTube in the next year will make some kind of radical redesign. I've already seen a redesign on their site, but some kind of redesign that makes viewing things more social like that too, so you can more easily see very quickly, here's everyone that's live right now, or here are all of the recommended for me live streams. Like, how many times have you gone onto YouTube and you've clicked on a video that's been recommended for you?
Oh, it's the main engine of YouTube. I mean, like, so much of my video gets watched. I watch a ton of YouTube that way, of course, because they do it well, right? I mean, the way iTunes for podcasters in the desktop version said, other people who are listening to your show are listening to this show. That worked so well. No one has ever, Rob, maybe you can work on this. No one's ever done that. It's the most easiest way. They talk about discovery all the time. I talk about it all the time. I loved it. I subscribed to so many podcasts that way, and they were relevant. And YouTube does this extremely well.
So I think they'll be doing that with live at some point, that they will much more prominently feature live. They'll make live easier to do. I don't know, maybe we'll see YouTube live Hangouts on Air via WebRTC using that same kind of technology that powered Blab, and now it's takeover kind of people.
Yeah, I think if you look at YouTube, it doesn't really have a really strong kind of social engagement kind of layer that's on there. I mean, you can do live stuff, but the conversations that happen over on YouTube around live stuff, it's usually fairly weak in comparison to what we saw on Blab. Yeah. And Blab was like a perfect platform for podcasters, because especially podcasters that didn't really have capabilities to record stuff, outside of doing the Blab, where they sent you an email that had a link to the video and the audio, and that you just grab that and publish it. I mean, a lot of these other platforms don't have that kind of capability.
Yeah, that was very cool. It did. They seemed to join with the podcasters. They knew we were using it for International Podcast Day. We teamed up with Blab. That was a platform we used. And they were pretty pro podcasting until they weren't.
Yeah.
Well, remember they bought PodClear, didn't they?
Yeah.
I actually used PodClear, and I paid for PodClear, and they bought it and they closed it down very quickly. So their behavior this week actually probably wasn't unusual because they very acted very quickly there. And the one thing, guys, we haven't said is the thing that I was really disappointed in is the fact that there was no notice. Yeah, there was no tweets about it. There's been no email communication to anybody who had an account. And therefore, people are still discovering that Blab has closed down. Not everybody was there every week like you guys have been.
And
so,
podcasters, they've experienced this before, right? Like
there's
stuff has
nothing new about
closed the doors, and you're just like, now what? So this is important, right? I mean, as I mentioned in the run-up, I built Podcasters Roundtable with Google Hangouts in mind, but I didn't build only on top of it. So when I read that scary article and thought that Google Hangouts on Air was actually being killed, it was like, what's next? And it was like, well, how are you going to get a hold of the audience? Well, I have a podcast. We turned this into a audio-only podcast. So it's not a problem. That would never go away. We just find a new platform. None of them make remote video at the numbers that we do, up to 10. No one makes it that easy. And then being tied right into YouTube was gold. So I'm very happy that that's not going away. But let's talk about building. If you're a podcaster who wants to live stream your podcast, because obviously this is not podcasting, it's not podcasting, but I mean, I would still recommend Google Hangouts on Air. But if your service shuts down without notice, I don't know, you guys want to think, this is why owning your feed and having a website is so important, right?
Well, I think especially if you're working with a startup company that's running off of investment capital, there's a risk that they're going to run out of money. Especially if there's no revenue model around it.
Even YouTube is not going to run out of money, just kill stuff all the time.
Well, that's true, but it's especially vulnerable with a venture-funded startup, and that's what Blab was. I mean, I think from day one, there was no revenue model, and if you think about, I don't know if there's a connection between, but when Facebook decided to start doing live video, I don't know how that impacted Blab, but it probably, it's a completely different kind of service, but I can certainly see some content creators moving over there and leaving Blab. So I don't know if that contributed to their decision.
And related to Krishna's thought about sort of closing the doors with little or no notice, where Blab it wasn't a thing that you were connected via social, right? It didn't all run through Twitter. So it's not like you lost your audience. You already have your audience. So that's kind of nice. Although you can't reach most of people on Twitter.
And there were those people who were, quote, big on Blab, unquote, that built their following on that platform. Yep. And now they have no following.
Wait, so how did they, by following people on Blab is what you're saying?
Right. So the way it worked originally is Twitter was just your key to get into Blab. That's how you create an account, as you logged in with Twitter. But then everyone you followed on Blab or who followed you was all within the Blab system. They didn't have to follow you on Twitter in order to follow you on Blab, and vice versa. Although if you did already follow other Twitter users who are Blab users, I think it either automatically followed them on Blab for you, or it suggested them for you. But in either case, it was easy to connect with those you were already following, but there wasn't a backwards step.
And related to that, I mean, with this move of Google Hangouts on Air, I mean, the circles, I don't know if circles are going to go away, Google Plus, I don't know what's the status of that, but, a lot of people, I've been telling people, circle me, you get the notifications, I invite people through the circles. That would be gone. I mean, you go to YouTube, a circle is not a subscriber. Subscribe on YouTube, by the way. But, this is why we've also concurrently always run an email list, right? Because how are people going to know you have a show? Or, Blab has been turned off. You could tweet out that that's happened. Your Blab followers, you're not going to be able to contact those people if you didn't get them on an email list, right? So what now? What are the people who've built a Blab following? Krishna, what are you going to do? What do you do? Well,
it's interesting. I actually had moved from Blab some months ago because we could actually see that things were a bit unsteady. And I have to say, addressing those people who were on Blab, some people never actually recorded their content on Blab. So I've had tweets from people this week saying, I just don't know how to get to the people who I was connected with. To your point, in terms of they were following people on Blab, they didn't add those people to a Twitter list. They didn't have any other way to connect, and they were just using it as a way to connect with people, but not doing any recording of content. So they weren't worried about the archiving of content, which we can access by going back to our emails if anybody wants to know about it in terms of if they're listening here
Maybe
later on.
if it's still available. I mean, get it now.
So I actually had already downloaded every piece of content. I mean, that's the key thing for me that was important on Blab was, yes, the community was great, but actually I was using it as a place for creating content and a place for doing interviews, and it wasn't the only place I wanted to use it. And so I'd already downloaded those, and some of that I've repurposed. Some of that content will end up in podcast episodes in the future, and the same with other things. But I have tried other platforms. I think that it's a really good point you make in terms of what do we do to build up that following, so that in fact it doesn't matter where we're live streaming from, where we're creating our content for podcasts from. People will go where you take them. And if you say we're experimenting here, usually we've got an audience that's happy to do that. And depending on who your guest is, I mean, that drives me in terms of what platform do I use, depending on the guest that's with me. Because, if it's a really well-known person, then I want to make sure everything runs really smoothly for them. And I'll obviously do things to help them beforehand. But if it's somebody who I know is also going to struggle with technology, that will influence me about how I record my podcast. So I won't necessarily just stick to one platform. Our shows at the minute are on Fire Talk. I actually joined Fire Talk over a year ago, firetalk.com.
Yeah,
we interviewed
we'll dive into what that is. Yeah. And Rob, it looks like you want to jump in. You gotta throw an elbow or two. You gotta push your way in the mosh pit here. Krishna she's got you, man.
Yeah, totally. Well, I wanted to give a little bit more context to what I knew about Blab a little bit. Blab was trying to do deals with big media companies. I knew that they were trying to get some investment. So I think that they originally started that company thinking that they were going to position themselves as an acquisition target for Twitter. And I don't think that happened. I do know that they were trying to pitch themselves to Rupert Murdoch from Fox. That deal didn't happen. So it could be that they kind of ran out of money, or their investors told them that they had to shift, else they wouldn't get any more funding. So, but as far as moving on, and we should probably talk about that, I mean, more as well as you've started here, is the other alternatives. Fire Talk and Crowdcast is another one, I guess, that's come up, and there's a few others too.
Yeah, these are all so new. I've barely heard of them, so we'll dive into those. But Dave, what's up?
Well, what I've done is, being that we're all kind of dipping our toe, I haven't played with Huzzah yet. I've been playing with Fire Talk, but I started to ask the podcast coach. I have used Google Hangouts On-Air. I've used Mixler. I've used Spreaker. I still use some of those. I used I forget the one. Blog Talk Radio. I've used Blab, and now I'm using Fire Talk, and that's why this show is podcastersroundtable.com/live. Mine is askthepodcastcoach.com/live. Daniel's is theaudacitypodcast.com/live. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think we all have /live, because that way I tell my audience every week. Because we're not sure. We were going to use Huzzah this week, and I don't think I am. I'm going to stay with Fire Talk just for one more week before we try something else. But I always just tell my audience, no matter, it's the same time every week. It's Saturday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, and then it's always askthepodcastcoach.com/live, and that will take you to wherever the heck I am. And that's when I see anybody do anything. I hear a lot of people go to patreon.com/whatever, and I'm like, for me, it's mywebsite.com/support. Because what if there's somebody comes online and it's better than Patreon that doesn't take as much money? Well, I'd want to switch to that platform. Now I've got 400 episodes telling people to go to patreon.com/Dave or whatever it is. So, go ahead.
And Dave is doing 3 things there that have really helped him. And I took a lesson from this. And in my recent episode of the Audacity podcast, I changed something a little bit. What Dave does is, for one thing, he records same time every week, unless there's some dire circumstance or for some reason. You can just assume, same bat channel, same bat time. It's my Saturday morning cartoons to watch Ask the Podcast Coach live on Saturday mornings at 10:30 Eastern over at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. But so what he does is he's consistent with his time. And he's consistent with that URL, what he was saying. So it's always /live, regardless of the technology he's using. So he never has to tell everyone, okay, we moved over here, so now everyone come over to this new system. They're just carried over automatically. The third thing, and this is the lesson I had to learn, and I've put into place more recently, is he reminds his audience every episode what time he's live, where to go, and he sticks to that schedule. And I realized, like, my live audience for the Audacity to Podcast, I've been recording at 2 p.m. Eastern on Mondays for the last 4 or 5 years. But my live audience for that show is 2, 5, maybe I got 10 sometimes here and there on Blab because of the social discovery aspect. But I realized the reason I wasn't getting an audience was in the podcast. I wasn't telling them I was still live and recording the show live and when I was live and every time I would be live. And that, in addition to the fact that Dave's schedule puts it on a Saturday when everyone is really eager to just be entertained and not tied up with work.
Yeah, it's the same thing that I do on Saturdays too with Todd. With the New Media Show, we're live every week at 9 a.m. Pacific, and then my Speaker Live show, I do it at 3 p.m. On Wednesdays Pacific Standard Time, and it's every week at the same exact time.
Yeah, it's even recommended for YouTubers, even who are not live. One of the pro sort of tips that YouTube themselves will give you is in your banner, like, tell people new videos every week. It doesn't have to be on the same day, but just getting people used to the fact that, hey, there is new content here every week gets them back or has them subscribe. Otherwise, people watch one video and they have really no reason to return. YouTube works like that a lot. So reminding people of when you're live. We do this show fortnightly, every 2 weeks. I just love saying that. I say it every time. But every 2 weeks, again, unless something comes up. But we're on round 76. I mean, podcastersroundtable.com/live is pretty new. We didn't move over there. I didn't move it over there. Daniel was urging me for a long time to embed, and I like the tech of the event page. Again, I was really tied to that event page. It really worked well for me, but the chat didn't work as well for everyone else, so I had to move to the .com/live. But that's a key element. Again, reminding people that one URL that won't change because you own it, and it doesn't matter what you're using behind the scenes. Now, I don't want to dive into like all the multiple platforms. I think Dave was rattling off a few, and your head just starts spinning. You're like, seriously, in like 6 months, 3 of those won't exist anymore, and it won't matter. Like it's a rotating cache of different services to use. But we will talk a little bit. I mean, again, if Google Hangouts On-Air had gone, this video, multi-person video, Blab is gone. It's not easy to do. So what is the new? So Blab died, and then immediately I saw like you guys talking about 2 new services, Fire Talk. Krishna, real quick, what is Fire Talk without getting too deep into it?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, do you want free or paid? So if you want a free solution, then I'd say take a look at Fire Talk. Fire Talk gives you the opportunity to create an account with one of your social networks or by email, and live immediately, so you get a little landing page. You can put a pre-recorded video, you can put details of the event, and that event page, it can be paid or free. We do a free show, that's where we do ours. For paid, then they have an integration with Stripe, and they take a percentage.
Is this just it's video chat? I mean, the same thing we're doing here? So
it's a video, but one of the things you can do, it works on Chrome and also Firefox, you could turn off your camera. So some people just want to have the audio. So you could do
that here if you wanted.
Yeah, so exactly. So you could just turn off the camera and you can just have audio. Now you don't get an email download, but you do get after your event or your live stream has happened. So you could go immediately live now. I could actually even do it from my mobile phone, so it works on iOS, and so I could immediately stream. Or I can schedule something, and that's what we do. So it's back to your point of having an exact time. So we do that same time, same place every week, right. And we have events set up. And so you can have up to 4 people.
Right. That was the problem with Blab.
You can operate for free up to 4 people. So I think that's a key thing to look at in terms of, do you want mobile access at this point in time, and do you want to have more than one person? Because some of the other platforms you're going to talk about, For multiple people, you have to pay.
Yeah, so that'll be dead in 5 months, and we'll be talking about something else. But but the key is that the state of live streaming seems to be, well, I mean, it's changing, but there's new services being built, new startups. People keep thinking that they can do this, maybe crack the nut, right? And I don't know, Rob, why do you think, I mean, it doesn't sound like, with YouTube, I mean, it's hard to compete against YouTube, but why do you think we keep seeing companies come and go, but nothing really succeeding?
I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of playing around in this area. You look at what's happened with Periscope, and you look at Meerkat. There's just over the last year and a half, 2 years, there's just been a lot of attention around video and a lot of live video, trying to build community around it, and people saw it as an opportunity, and saw a lot of these big technology companies look at it going, we might want to add that. Periscope is a classic example of that. They started as a startup, and they got acquired by Twitter. So that's what the goal of a lot of these companies is to be acquired.
Yeah, I mean, the Blab
and it doesn't happen all the time.
Right. The Blab CEO sort of outlined the bad business case for live, right? I mean, at least for broadcasting. I don't know if one of you remember that post and what he said.
Well, it's the numbers are usually pretty small, and
it's like once a week.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
For an hour.
Yeah, exactly. And the truth of the matter is that there's not a lot of people listening. Now, Blab was a little bit of an exception. I thought that they were actually starting to build some serious momentum around what they were doing.
Well, what he said is that like people came there just to hang out, like just to sit around and chat, like I logged on after work, as opposed to broadcasting, which seemed to be really kind of the minority. And if people were using the broadcast, what we're doing here, we're doing a show, that it was, it's such a small amount of time during 1 week or 2 weeks that it's not enough to keep the platform alive. Yeah,
and they want to have more kind of like personal chats and things like that. I mean, actually, just this past week, I think didn't Google announce the acquisition of another platform, a video platform called Duo, I think. That was basically a video chat platform, and they were going to support audio as well. So I think that's part of what we're seeing is that we're shifting. This technology is shifting towards more social kind of environments. And I think if you look at Blab was a little bit of an example of that. But I think a lot of podcasters jump into it and started to really dominate it. And, I mean, I talked to Sean, the CEO of Blab, about this, and he just was not in favor of trying to push forward with trying to support podcasters more. I mean, I tried to do a deal with them. I know that Libsyn and Blueberry and stuff, they all talked to him too about trying to do some sort of a relationship to try and refer.
What was the barrier? Why is he not interested in podcasts? It's just we're too small? I mean, what's the...
I just think it got back to there wasn't enough session activity with it. It was too focused on like shows like you're talking about. And I also sensed in that post that he made that he thought that the content was bad.
Yeah, it says right here the struggle because most live streams aren't interesting enough to justify stopping what they're doing to watch your broadcast.
But I mean, there's some truth in that.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's a lot of truth in that.
For the majority, I mean, even this show is podcasters, we're niche focused. Most people are not going to check into this show if they stumbled across it.
But in some ways, he's kind of missing the point, though. What's happening in the new media space is the nichification of media, and I think that the reality is that he just didn't see the bigger vision of where this could go, and
he had a different big vision. It sounds like.
Well, that was it. He said he didn't want to succeed at somebody else's vision. He wanted to succeed at his, and this just wasn't. He wanted this social network thing, and I'm with Rob. I think he wanted to sell it to somebody and get acquired, and when that didn't happen, they went, well, now what?
Bail. Yeah.
So for podcast, how do we relate to? I mean, for podcasters, it doesn't matter who comes and goes, right? Because we have shows that exist, RSS feed that we hopefully own. But I mean, we talked about, again, on Podcast Roundtable 26, like, should you do it? Well, for those of us who've decided to do it, we're all doing it. I mean, why do all your shows go live?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Why do they all?
All the shows you do, you also do live, right?
No, that's
okay. You don't do school podcasting
Daniel.
live.
No,
that's Daniel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why do you do any of your shows live?
I love it because the chat room rocks. It's kind of funny because you do that for the 30, 40 people that show up if you're lucky enough to get those kind of numbers. And it's great to get that instant feedback, but in the long run, that's maybe 5, maybe if you're doing great, 10% of your audience. So it's kind of funny that you're going through all these extra technical hurdles, and you're getting up, and it doesn't, through rain, snow, sleep, hail, I will get up on Saturday at 10:30 for this very small group of people.
Except that I think that small group is like, again, I mentioned that those are more likely to be your patrons. They're probably the people sharing. They're 30 people that equal like 300 of your other, I think, because they're so interested in participating with you. You know them a little bit more. I mean, Stargate Pioneer, he's in the chat. Like he makes a clamor out of, I think, every Podcasters Roundtable. He finds the nugget, and then like he clamors it, and it's amazing. Like that's a lot of work. I mean, he's super engaged, but he's like got the bullhorn, and he's saying, check out this Podcasters Roundtable. So it's, that small group is much bigger. We know that in podcasting, like small numbers mean different things.
Yeah, and for me, getting that instant feedback from an audience, and you're right, a lot of those people are my patrons, it then helps me make better content because I don't have to sit there and go, I wonder what they're thinking. I know what they're thinking because they just said it in the chat room.
Yeah, we kind of, in talks about podcasting, we talk about being a more intimate medium and that it's like a two-way conversation, but no, it's not. I mean, not in real time. Like you're talking to the microphone. There's still not people out there. No one's going to answer your question until they send in voice feedback or an email or something. But with live, it is right now, right?
It's instant. Yep.
I mean, you can. I'll take a little bit of a different tack on this. I've been known in the past to record shows in advance and play them as though they're live.
I've done that. I've done it and did like a DVD commentary. And Dave actually kind of does this where he interrupts all his like voicemail feedback to like say, hey, did you hear what he said there? Pay attention. This part is really important. He just told you that he podcasts in his underwear. Like and then he goes on with the part. Yeah. So like it's like a DVD commentary. I've done it, and what's great about that is that I'm able to actually engage in the chat room while it's going live. Now, you should make it clear that you're doing that because it's a little weird. But yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah, and going live there's a different kind of vibe, different kind of energy that you have doing it. I mean, like I'll go to like the Podcast Movement and I'll do live from my booth there, and there's background noise, people talking in the background. There's just a different kind of vibe of doing that. And that's what I really like at those type of events, is getting somebody sitting down and everybody's kind of in that mindset of just talking and sharing and stuff like that. But it is a little different taking that home in my little home studio here and recording. Doing it live, it helps me stay kind of focused, but it's also a risk too. I mean, it's a lot easier, and I know all you guys know this, a lot easier to make mistakes live, and you can't really fix it, So
I've got a question, if I can, for you guys.
Please.
You're talking about audience. And Rob, I've seen you, and I've caught up with you in terms of your show that you do at a weekend, and it's on Facebook. And it's on Facebook Live, and I've interacted with you there. I'm wondering, of the rest of you, are you thinking or have you experimented in terms of capturing that audience that you probably have either with your friends or if you have a Facebook page, actually connecting with that audience for your podcasts when you're recording them?
Well, we're trying to, with the new media show, we're trying to do simulcast live video streaming on as many platforms as we can get away with. For a while there, I think we were live streaming on three platforms plus our website.
Why?
Just to try and reach those different groups that are in those platforms. It's not easy to do. I mean, Todd Cochran is the one that's got the studio. He's got the high-end TriCaster, so he can do that. Most people don't have the capability of streaming to 3 different video platforms at the same time.
Yeah, when I tweeted out about Google Hangouts On-Air and people were like, "Oh, what are you going to move to Skype?" and I was like, "Well, no, none of that is easy." Like,
yeah.
I'm a geek and I'm a podcaster who podcasts about gear, and I don't want to do all the Wirecast, and I don't want to do that. And I want to get on a Hangout on air. Unfortunately, that's not going away. So, yeah, I mean, for the bulk of people who want to live stream, it needs to be this easy.
It does. No, that's
Well,
right.
I'll give you a solution in a minute, but I'm interested in the rest of you. Are you guys thinking about it, or have you been using Facebook to bring in a live audience and live stream there for your shows?
I have. I used to go out
Yeah.
about 10:30 every day, and I would just share what was on my mind or whatever. And I had to be very careful because a lot of times it was inspired by something that would come across being a Libsyn support person. So you can't go out at 10:30 and just start complaining about your customers. That doesn't go very well with the boss. But I was doing that for a while, and I've had people, and they were always really short and sweet, which is kind of didn't work for that format because about the time people would show up, and I'm like, and that's what I'm thinking today, and then it was gone. But that platform lets people comment later. But
I've seen you playing your guitar over there.
yeah, so I've done a couple different things. What about you guys?
I'm thinking of doing more because I am experimenting with different live platforms and experimenting with different software and tools. I see the nice engagement on the Facebook side, and certainly a lot of people are on Facebook. And right now, Facebook does nicely highlight when someone is going live. The one thing I don't like, at least the last time I tested Facebook Live, and it might still be this way, the audio quality is noticeably lower. Like it's lower than low quality Hangouts on Air audio quality. And maybe they'll fix that at some point.
What's the ROI? What's the return on that can be a big investment to go out to multiple platforms, interact with several different communities. Is it worth it for a podcaster who has a show that exists in iTunes where the majority of their audience is coming from?
I don't think so. I mean, as it is, your live audience is so small already. So why bother live streaming out to 3 or 5 different services? Why not just, if you're going to live stream, just tell people, go to this place and make it a URL. Even if that URL redirects, make it a 307 or a 302 temporary redirect, by the way. But even if you just tell them, go to myawesomepodcast.com/live, and that takes them to your Facebook page or Fire Talk or Huzza or whatever, it's something consistent that they can learn. And then you're always pointing them to that one place. You don't have to worry about broadcasting out to 5 places for 2 people to watch.
Well, the goal is to get more than 2.
Of course, that's the goal.
So it's, I think that getting out to multiple platforms, I think is a way to reach new audiences.
So what are the tricks? What do you guys do? Krishna, how do you get people to your live stream?
So I do promotion during the week. I would be creating video content for social media and other posts that I do. I actually use Facebook Live event page, the Facebook event pages. So every time I've already got them pre-planned and they're saved and scheduled to go out. So once one show is over, the next show goes out. And I then cross-post that from the Livestream Insiders Facebook page to other places as well. So I'm cross-promoting that. That's one of the key things that I'm doing. And I, too, have been experimenting, as we said, about live platforms. And I always sit and watch you guys because you kind of are the techie geeks and the experts at all the tech stuff. And I would be at the other end in terms of I know enough to be dangerous, but I wouldn't necessarily have all that technology. And I think your point around actually, when I watch the shows that are being restreamed, let's say, into many places, you've really got to have the processing capacity to be able to handle it. There's free and there's very low-cost software. I personally use vMix, which I find is a terrific platform, not expensive for streaming, and it integrates with Facebook. But the capacity it requires of me, if it's only me that's doing it's one thing, but if I then am bringing other guests in and through other platforms, my setup doesn't allow it for me to be on live on the same PC. I'd have to have somebody else, and that means I need to have a producer, and I don't have a producer. So here's a suggestion for some of the people who are listening who perhaps are like me and don't necessarily have all that infrastructure and studio around them. One of the reasons that a lot of people have been moving from Blab to Huzza, Huzza, is the fact that actually that's a multi-person platform. You can have up to 6 people. They've got a free service, so if it was just yourself and you wanted to go live and you wanted to be in landscape over on Facebook, their recent integration a couple of weeks ago is they do all of that processing for you. So your CPU isn't under pressure. you actually can sign up, go to the site, you just sign up for the beta as it is at the minute, and you can now send your live stream from Huzza to Facebook. So there's a show that's doing that. Some of your audience might know about it, Social Media Examiner. And so they've been using Huzza, and they have a big team producing their show. They've got like 6 people who kind of, or thereabouts, who actually plan the show the day before. They do the live stream, and then they take it out as a podcast, and they're obviously a big media platform. So that's what they're using, and I think it's worthwhile having a look at. So anything above 1 person on camera, you need to pay for. And I think probably would be the next step to look at.
Yeah,
but I'm still holding out, to be honest, for Facebook to actually introduce multi-people. So they said a few months ago they'd have multi-person on Facebook. What we don't know is who's going to get that first. It's probably the celebrities and the verified pages, and whether or not there's going to be limitations about how somebody can be on there. But that's why you might want to go and check out Huzza.
Yeah, I mean, check them all out. I'll put some in the show notes for some we may not have mentioned and some that we did, because there's guarantee you don't know how to spell that. I don't. I'm like, how the heck am I going to find Huzza? Like, sneeze and hope it shows up in Google. Like, so check them out. But the key thing, build your audience. When you're there, you're going to hopefully it's going to work for you, and you're going to grab a little bit more of audience. But as Daniel and Dave talked, get them used to going to somewhere else, not Huzza or Fire Talk or Kaflufa or whatever. Like, get them used to going to your URL. So when you build that audience there, you take them with you when you go to the next one, right? So I think that's really important.
But you need to make sure that there's a capability. I know it was a race to the starting line. You have to make sure that there's embed code that you can get out of the platform. Not all these platforms have embed code.
Well, I mean, what do you mean if you want to put on? I'm saying, like, make sure that the audience who's watching you on Fire Talk knows that where they really should be going is your email list or to podcastersroundtable.com.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were saying to go to like a .com/live page that has a player embed.
That too. I mean, if they have that capability, right? If you can embed the player like you can do here with, on podcastersroundtable.com/live, we have the embedded YouTube player there. Yep. I think Facebook lets you embed players, stuff like that. So that's always nice, especially building that brand and getting people used to your URL as opposed to whatever you're using, the way Dave is doing it. So yeah, it's just really important to remember when you are trying out all these different services, get your own branding in there, right? I mean, this is one thing where, it's important to sort of bake some stuff into your show. And I'm not just talking about live stuff, that no matter where your content ends up, people know the brand that they're on, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about... Go ahead, Daniel.
And I think as far as whether you embed it or whether you point them to something else, using that consistent URL is more important. But a nice thing about embedding it on your site, if you're able to, is then you control the experience 100%. So if you don't like the chat room that such and such service provides, then you can embed your own chat room. Or if you want to display banner ads for your sponsors. Hey, there's an idea. You could have a sponsor for your live event, and you tell them, hey, it only costs $49 a month to sponsor my live show, and there's your payment for Huzza or Kaflufa or whatever service.
Dave owns Kaflufa.
And I need to say something here, guys, which is
do it.
I embed with caution. Because lots of people, and in fact there's a microeconomy that was built up around platforms like Blab with plugins and so on developed so you can embed quickly and your automatically your recent live stream. You know what happened when that platform closed down? You're going to have to go back and actually go back to every single article you wrote to embed it, unless you just have one page.
Right.
So I just had it on one page. So that's why I'm just holding out that YouTube doesn't fall over at some stage, because that's why I love my playlist on YouTube.
I think that's
I can have that embedded.
Yeah, me too. I mean, YouTube is number one, but I mean that's why it's so important to, I think, always think like something's going to fold, like act like it's going out of business tomorrow.
That's right.
And with podcasting, I mean, like we don't necessarily have that concern, right? I mean, if you have your podcast, you have your RSS feed, which hopefully you have control of, so that if your host does go out of business, you can move. But we're not worried about someone closing the doors. If iTunes shuts down tomorrow, which they could, or they could say, we don't want you in here because we're Apple and you violated terms of service or whatever. It's not over, right? I mean, you're not building on that platform, right? It would be tragic for us if in the sense of a word, if iTunes shut down or kicked you out. But you're not done. You still have a podcast.
Absolutely.
Just move on to something else.
That's it. And we get Yahoo to come back into the game.
There you go.
They're still strong, Dave.
Yeah.
Are
My
they? Yeah,
Hotmail account is.
Yahoo had a
I
directory
think
before I.
they're owned by somebody else now, right?
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I just can't wait to try Kafufla.
I'm building it. It's going to be a while.
Okay.
Kafufa. Where do these names come from, actually?
Because there's no names left.
That's it.
Right? You own your own. That's a challenge with your own URL.
I want to go back to something that Krishna mentioned, and Krishna and Ray kind of brought up, is how do you use live to build your audience? I take a slightly different approach that I don't see, except for when I was on Blab. And one of the reasons I used Blab was because Blab, being a social thing, did have a discovery aspect to it. Mm-hmm. And Facebook kind of has that too, although no one's going to see your live video who isn't already connected with you in some way, at least currently. But I use live as a way to better engage with the audience I already have. So I'm not looking to use live to grow my audience, because the people who don't know about me don't know when my show is, don't know about my show. So it's more engagement, more relationship building to me to do live. Now that is, unless I'm on a platform like Blab where there is that discovery aspect. Fire Talk has that a little bit built in. Maybe YouTube will get that at some point as well. So there can be that benefit. But I think if anyone out there is considering going live, think of it instead not as a way to grow your audience, because realistically, you might grow your audience by 1 or 2. Most likely, it's a better way to better connect with the audience you already have, because there can be the pre-show, the post-show. There might be those interruptions along the way. I mean, Rob said you have to work harder to make sure your performance is good, unless you don't care that much about a bad live performance that you then correct in post. And that's what we do with our Once Upon a Time podcast. Sure. We have bloopers all the time, and we don't try to do it perfectly. Even when I record the Audacity to podcast, I mess up here and there, and I decide, that's a significant enough mess up. I'm just going to say that again and then edit it in post, make it, or have my editor fix that in post. But for our live audience, when we mess up, sometimes we just have fun with it. And so our live audience gets to see something that no one else gets to see except our Patreon supporters.
So what you're saying is, don't use live to build your audience. Focus on getting a new and noteworthy if you really want to grow.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that's what you were saying. Okay. Yeah. With this show,
throw that new and noteworthy thing in there, didn't you?
Of course. Of course.
Cloud the space.
I'm hoping Todd is still listening and he'll vomit a little in his mouth. But I don't remember what I was going to say. But building an audience. But this show is live, and this is how you're going to hear it in the podcast. And that's one of the reasons I'm able to do this show on any regular basis. The Podcaster Studios is certainly not regular anymore, and this show can, because I record in studio. I record here the audio and put that in the podcast. I don't rip it out of the Hangout on Air, which you can do if you're a podcaster. You can do that. It's not horrible. It works in the case of an emergency. I've certainly done it here. But then repurpose that for a podcast. And the video does not go in. Now we're talking mainly about video platforms and doing live streaming, but to take your video and then put it in a podcast feed is not very friendly. Hosting is not friendly to video. I mean, there are some options, but we'll definitely get into that into another round about video podcasting. But that's one of the main reasons you don't see. I think kerfluffer.com must be available. Is that why you're telling me in the chat?
Dave is grabbing every .com.
Yeah, it was available 2 seconds ago, but we're gonna get ourselves in our own kerfluffle here.
Yes,
we don't wrap it up. But Good stuff. I mean, what is the state of live streaming? And we didn't talk about audio only. Now, Rob, you work for Spreaker, which you guys are audio only, correct?
Yes, correct.
But I mean, it's primarily a live platform. Was it live platform first? Is that your primary?
Well, that's what's unique about the platform is that it's built on IceCast servers, which basically enable the same kind of streaming technology that a lot of these streaming services, music services, run on, and has been powering live radio streams for years and years. So that's kind of our core back end, but we have all the same capabilities of a regular podcast platform that records and distributes MP3 files and all that stuff. So we kind of combine those technologies together. So you do a live show that immediately is created into an MP3 file that's made available in your RSS feed. It's an integrated process.
Why are you guys sort of all in on live then?
Because I think that there's a certain percentage of content creators, just like what we've seen here, just in the small group of content creators that are on this show, like to do live. So, I think trying to combine those things together, I think has a certain power to them that has been and is kind of unique. And as you look at kind of broadcast radio and you think of how much live content has been around all of us for decades, I think it's just a piece of the space that needs to continue. It just needs to get better.
Yeah, I mean, for audio only, I mean, Mixler's been around forever, and Dave, you may still even use that, but there's not, I mean, Mixler could go and Spreaker feels like it would be the only good platform left. I mean, I don't think that there's, where we've got video services moving in and out all the time. You've heard here there's several, but I don't know how many audio only live streaming services are there.
Well, especially ones that combine with podcasting too. I think there's thestreamguys.com is another one that's kind of blending those together as well.
Never heard of that one. Huh.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, do you guys do audio only live? Rob does, obviously.
When I remember to, I use Mixler for my live stream, and I'm a paying customer of Mixler. I may cancel that, but that is something that's nice. On my live page, I'll have a little tab that switches back and forth between click this and you can watch the video, or click this and you can listen to only the audio.
What do you see on uptake as audio versus video?
It's
who's listening to live audio?
It's the low bandwidth people. So for our Once Upon a Time podcast, we have a more international audience there that shows up for the live than I do for any of our other shows. And so they're on limited bandwidth, they're on a mobile device, they are maybe just not interested in seeing us, they only want to hear us, or maybe our live streaming video tech is blocked for them. It's different things. We've got people from Brazil, from the Philippines, places that don't have as fast of an internet connection, or that they're on some kind of bandwidth cap.
And both Mixler and Spreaker will alert your audience that you're live. So I know I've had people that have been out at the grocery store or whatever, and they're listening to Ask the Podcast Coach because their phone's at, hey, Dave's live.
That's important. Again, I talked about the importance for this show of a reminder, because, I mean, how many times have you seen that something's going to be live that you really want to watch?
And you forget.
Yeah, it's Sunday. It's Sunday at 2, and you're like, my live stream was 4 hours ago. Yeah. Like, I forgot. Like, it's critical when live is to say, hey, your live stream is starting, and having an RSVP function is great. Now, obviously, if you just follow somebody the way you did on Blab or what you do on Spreaker, it sounds like that works too, right? So that's nice.
One thing that some people are just starting to do, certainly with live streams, video live streams rather than audio live streams, I haven't seen it for that, is send text message alerts. So getting people to opt into that, which might be things. And you were talking about platforms that we might have used in the past for live audio. I haven't done live audio for a long time, but some of you might remember that platform, which is still around, called Blog Talk Radio. So I used that for several different things in the past.
Yeah, Blog Talk seems to be the only one that really, I mean, we have varying opinions on Blog Talk. Through the years, they've gotten better, but call-ins, the phone, they seem to be the only ones that's their unique offering, is that they do that really well. Now, Rob, I would love to see Spreaker do that more, but is that not something, because I hear a lot of people, that's why they might be on Blog Talk, because people can call in on their phone to their show, right?
Be careful what you wish for.
All right.
That one is would be my comment.
So you got to tell us more. You can't.
Well,
go.
the be careful what you wish for really gets back to do you want good audio quality or do you want sucky audio quality?
I mean, we're used to phone calls on the radio. We all grew up and still listen to call-ins in the car though on the radio.
But a lot of those shows on Blog Talk Radio are done where the host is on the phone, the guests are on the phone.
That's different. That's a different issue. Yes, altogether. The host should not. But we're used to good quality in the studio. Those people should have better.
Correct.
The call-ins to make it really super simple for your audience, and then as a host.
Yeah.
To be able to field those calls simply, put people on hold. Blog Talk has done that pretty cool. I mean, that's why if you wanted to do that, that's what I would recommend Blog Talk for. Hopefully you're going to produce higher quality than calling you on a phone. That's not something I'm going to listen to.
Well, I think that there is an opportunity, I think, to build a platform, just like what you say, that actually has higher quality call-in capability. So let's say your app, you can call into a show right in the app.
Would you spell it SPREAKER?
Yeah, it's a possibility. Yes.
Yeah, all right. I would love to. That's and I don't use Spreaker enough, but it would be really cool. I think that you guys have an opportunity to sort of grab that market because we've seen Blog Talk struggle with quality.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's what they've kind of. It's been a double-edged sword for them. It's been great for them to have that capability, but it's also hurt them in their reputation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess we should head out. We got sitting at that hour
Stuff
mark.
to do.
I'm sure the audience has stuff to do. I don't have anything to do. That's not true. I should go record another podcast. All right. It's always time. We always need more time. Podcasters.
Call me back, Ray. We'll do another podcast before we're done.
All right. Well, anyone who has been on the Roundtable before knows that we actually do another show after we stop broadcasting. There's like an hour of just chit chat, which is stuff that should definitely be recorded. Dave gave a special shout out and a talk about that recently. Thanks, Dave, for doing your co-hosting duties and spreading the love. But
bonus content, right?
It is bonus content. I'll capture it and hey, patrons. All right, we're working on that. Trying to get me to do more work. But if you want to be in the post show, the behind the scenes, have that fun chat, dig all the dirt and dish the dirt, whatever. I don't know. If you want to hear the behind the scenes stuff that people won't say live, sign up. podcastersroundtable.com/guest. We'll put you on the list. You can tell us what you want to talk about. We'll do a roundtable about it. And before we leave, please announce what magazine's on the table. That's IKEA. So if you want to buy some cheap furniture and spend all night building it,
I'm sorry.
Get a catalog. Now,
See, that's a fun thing with the live audiences. In the chat room, they were trying to figure out what's the magazine in the background, and I was looking at it, zooming in, and I thought, that looks like a camera lens on the front. Maybe that's a photography magazine.
I thought they were talking behind you. Of course, there's nothing behind you. It's black, so that wouldn't make any sense. Yes, it is play. Let's play What's Behind Ray. That's something fun for the video audience. Again, that's part of the live. Yes, I love that. The chat.
Yeah, Ray, what's that red thing over your shoulder there?
That one is just a tea kettle. So that's my favorite one. It's a little splash of color. It spices up the video. When you do video live streaming, it has to look good. I had to brush my hair. I might have shaved a little bit. So much work.
Cool looking stubble there, I have to say.
Yeah, that's right. So much work to be live. Dave's got his pictures in the background, so it's all very good stuff. But again, let's spread the love a little. Tell us what your podcast is, or tell us where we can find it. So anyone watching this show interested in hearing more of you can go there and get it, and then we will say thank you and wave ourselves out of here. Rob, thanks for joining us as always. I don't know how many roundtables this is for you. If you're getting close to 10, it's almost your last.
It's probably in that range, 6 to 10, something like that.
You can't. The running joke is you get a T-shirt when you hit 10. So the joke is you'll never make it to 10. You'll never make it.
Then I hit 10. So.
You hit 10. Where can we find your show?
SpreakerLiveshow.com. Really easy. SpreakerLiveshow.com, and that's with an R when you type in Spreaker. And my other show is the New Media Show. It's at newmediashow.com, and that's done every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific with Todd Cochran from Geek News Central, Blueberry, PowerPress plugin.
You name it. One of my favorite shows. I have you guys. I always queue up for the plane because I'm going to get a good chunk of plane ride out of that show. It's a good hour plus. I love it.
Yeah, and we've been pushing 2 here recently. So
keep going, man. It's okay by me. That's the beauty of a podcast audience. When they hit subscribe, they pretty much like your show.
Yeah,
We can talk about show length, but
and you can also get articles that I write and all these shows off of robgreenlee.com. So
yeah, okay, good one. I was going to say, your first shout out there was to Spreaker.com. Now that's your employer, but I mean, at some point, if you don't work there anymore, we talked about the whole where do you send people, but I get it in this case. So, good stuff. All right, Rob, thanks as always. Krishna, thanks for joining us for your first roundtable. But of course, you've been in the community. You've been a roundtabler for a long time.
Well, it's been great to be here. And for one place to go to, just go to krishna.me and you'll find a link there to our live shows for the Livestream Insiders, where every week, and it's a 30-minute show, and that's a video show. And then for my audio podcast, you'll find it there, Talking Social Business, and on that we talk about legal issues around social and technology tools around social media communications.
Very cool. And Ryan asked in the chat room, should he sign up to be a guest again? Nope, you're on the list. Sometimes it takes a long time. The show only goes once every 2 weeks with one new person. It will take a while to get you rotated in here. We will get you on the show, but you're on the list. You get the alerts that we're going to go live tomorrow or next week or whenever. So I also would encourage you guys, if you're on the list and you haven't been on and you see an announcement of an episode around that's coming up that you have special expertise in or something that you think you can add value to and want to talk about, just remind me. Twitter @podcasthelper or shoot me an email. That helps. Bugging me does help. That's a dangerous thing to say. Hey, just bug me. But if you see a round that you want to be on, let me know. It does help. And when you sign up to RSVP, when you RSVP to be live, of course, event page, I don't know if it'll still be there. Sometimes I go based on people who interact. I mean, you can tell from the comments. Krishna, I think I picked you out mainly because you had RSVP'd to see it, and I saw that you were very qualified. You do a lot of streaming. You've been in the space since like 2005. You're blogging, so she had the cred, so we got her on here. So again, thank you so much. Dave, co-hosting duties completed. Check is in the mail. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Dave Jackson, schoolofpodcasting.com, and if you want to see my live stuff, come over to askthepodcastcoach.com/live, which should be interesting this week because at the end of my show, a film crew is going to bust into my house. So that should be great fun.
That's a teaser enough. I'm not even going to ask. I'm going to tune in. What was the URL again? Because it cut out here on this side.
askthepodcastcoach.com/live.
So, Dave, are you starting a reality show? Is that what's going on here?
No, there's a podcast documentary called The Messengers. And
totally good. I got the T-shirt. That's all I got was the T-shirt.
So they're coming here to interview me this weekend.
Yeah.
Very cool. Check it out. And Daniel, co-hosting duties also complete. Your check, not quite as much as Dave's, but it's in the mail.
Thank you. I'm Daniel J. Lewis from theaudacitytopodcast.com. Come to theaudacitytopodcast.com/live Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time to watch the show recorded live.
Awesome. And if it makes anyone feel better, I do not pay myself, so I don't get a check. Those guys, that's all I can afford, so no one gets paid here.
We donate our thoughts.
Yes, everyone donates. That's the beauty of podcasting. People do it because they love it. We'll see you next time if you love the Roundtable, Podcaster Roundtable 77. Wave goodbye. Where's the stop button?